Hey everyone, I hope everyone is doing well. I'm Audencia Avila and Jonathan and I did our presentation on hearing impairment. So I'm going to do the first half and then you'll get to watch another video where he finishes off. So hearing impairment. So in order to understand it, we should know what it is. So again, most know it as deaf or deafness, and we describe here the difference where deaf is a student that is extremely hard of hearing and uses sign language to communicate, and deafness is a level of hearing impairment that is severe enough that the student might not understand acoustic language. So again, just because someone is hearing impaired or categorized as being hearing impaired doesn't mean they're deaf. So a student can just be hard of hearing, and that typically means that the student does not hear well but can still communicate verbally, but again, they will need some type of assistance. So they don't have complete loss of hearing, but they will need something to help them hear a little better. Jonathan added here a link that you can go on if you want to read a little more about it, about what hearing impairment is. So some adaptations that you can do in your classroom, we listed some here. One of them would be to move your student that is hearing impaired closest to the area of lecture. Again, this just means like if you have your classroom set up in rows, you might want to seat them more towards the front so they can hear you a little better. If you seat them in the back, they're not going to be able to hear what you're saying as well. Also, place student next to speaker during lectures or visual audio display. Say you're showing something on a projector or a television. Make sure they're closest to where the sound is coming from, again, so they can hear. Use visual presentations with subtitles or audio lectures. This was one of the biggest things that I read about, where make sure that you use plenty of visuals with them, because again, their hearing may not be so well, but if they're able to see it visually, it'll help them out. So make sure to use visual presentations, and again, subtitles. Again, if you're showing some sort of movie or documentary, make sure if it has subtitles, you include those. And again, it goes to the next point where you should use more visual and hands-on activities in class. You don't want to solely, and we learned this throughout all of our classes, to not solely rely on where you're just up there lecturing and they're just taking notes. If you're doing more hands-on activities, obviously they're going to be able to understand it more, because they're not relying on just listening to what you're saying. And then obviously speak louder and then repeat information if necessary. Make sure you're enunciating. Don't speak. Obviously, you're going to be lecturing, or you're going to be in front of a class, so you're going to have that loud voice, but make sure you are being loud enough where the whole class can hear you. And again, sometimes it's hard for some students to hear, so make sure you repeat information if asked. Also, another thing I know I read about was, if you're talking, make sure you're talking to the class. Don't be writing something down on the board, talking to the board, because again, it's going to be hard for them to hear you. And then again, be consistent, speak clearly. And finally, allow for enough response time. Sometimes, if they're hard of hearing, they're not going to be able to take in the information you're telling them as fast as someone who doesn't have difficulty with hearing. So make sure you allow them to process whatever you're asking of them, and then allow them to give you that response. And Jonathan will continue to go on with some more adaptations for hearing impairment. Thank you.